ISIL's leaders are determined to strike the U.S. homeland beyond inspiring homegrown violent extremist attacks. Although the U.S. is a harder target than Europe, ISIL external operations remain a critical factor in our threat assessment.
National Intelligence Director James Clapper with a sobering warning about the likelihood of an ISIS attack here in the United States this year. And given the terrorist attack last year in San Bernardino, lawmakers are concerned ISIS leadership is laying the groundwork right now to strike with its own operatives inside our nation. For more, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Newsmax, Washington, former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz, currently the Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy. And Skyping in from New Jersey, Ryan Mauro, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time tonight on Newsmax Prime. Fred, first to you. How likely is the threat of an ISIS attack right here in the United States?
Well, JD, good evening. I'm afraid it's very likely. What Clapper said, however, wasn't surprising. Remember that last fall, FBI Director Comey said that the FBI has 900 open ISIS-related terrorist investigations in this country. So Clapper's just confirming something that we already should have known, but it was good to have him say this because the Obama administration is not admitting to this threat, and I think he took a useful step in raising consciousness to this severe threat.
Ryan, Fred just referenced not only the testimony of Director Clapper, but also FBI Director Comey. If I'm not mistaken, Director Comey went on to say that active investigations of ISIS agents are going on in all 50 of our states. So we know that somebody is out there, but Ryan, are we even prepared for another attack here in our country?
I think the greater question is, are we prepared to intercept the operatives before they commit the attack? Because we know how to respond to an attack, but we lack the resources to properly investigate everyone, and that comes straight from a House Homeland Security Committee report that said that the rate of radicalization now is so high that federal resources are being strained. And the other thing that James Clapper said was that Sunni terrorists as a whole are gaining momentum, as opposed to the administration's narrative that they're still pushing them back. He says, no, they're gaining momentum, and the number of Sunni violent extremist groups, members, and safe havens is greater than at any other point in history. That's a direct quote from his testimony. Very frightening.
It is rather ominous. And when you combine terror and technology, Fred Fleitz, there is something else going on that we need to address. Back to the FBI. As it admitted, it still cannot crack the encryption code from one of the cell phones of the San Bernardino shooters. Makes it the second time the FBI has said encryption has hindered their ability to access evidence in a terror case. What needs to be done?
This is a very important story, JD. Now, this new encryption is being incorporated into Apple and Google smartphones, supposedly is to protect the American people, to protect their privacy. But in fact, this type of encryption was put in place by these companies to protect the American people from the American government in the aftermath of the Snowden leaks. And I think it's really reprehensible. There are a lot of criminal cases, some involving murder across this country, that police cannot break because they can't get into cell phones where there is crucial evidence. And I think legislation is going to pass to allow the U.S. government to have some kind of legal way of getting into these phones to solve terrorist cases and to solve other major crimes such as murder.
Ryan, what's your reaction both to the challenges of encryption and to what Fred just said?
Well, what the telecommunications companies, the people making the encryption, are saying is that it does have to do with concerns about the NSA, making that a market for this, but also concerns about hacking. And what their argument is, and I don't necessarily agree with it, is that if you have a key to unlock that encryption, then hackers inevitably will also figure out how to do it. And so their argument is that the threat from cybercrime is higher than the threat from terrorism, but I agree that there will have to be action that will require anyone that uses encryption in their communications like this, any type of company, to have that key and to hand that over to the government after getting proper authority.
Let's talk some about not the spoken word, not the encrypted word, but the visual image. Iran has reportedly just released new images of those captured American sailors of last month weeping, crying. Fred, when you have this kind of psychological warfare from Iran, first of all, how would you classify it, and what should we be doing?
This is propaganda, JD. That's why these American sailors were taken prisoner. Though they were released fairly quickly, but the purpose was to humiliate the United States and to create some propaganda that Iran could use to advance its interests worldwide. I think it's reprehensible, and it simply shows that, contrary to the administration's claims that the fact that these sailors were released shows that diplomacy works, Iran has not changed its stripes and has a lot to do to basically deserve to be admitted back into the community of civilized states. And that includes releasing other Americans it is still holding hostage.
Ryan, final 20 seconds are yours. You get the last word.
Sure, this is the Iranian equivalent of what ISIS does when they releases the beheading video. They don't want to go that far, but the impact is meant to be the same, to have a narrative of victory that draws people into their ideology. And also testimony that came out from the same hearing said that Iran is expected to conduct a test that's equivalent to an ICBM within the next year.
Very ominous indeed. Ryan Mauro in New Jersey, Fred Fleitz at Newsmax Washington. Gentlemen, we appreciate the time. Up next, our political panel about last night in New Hampshire. Stay with us.